Hi everyone, my name is Nia Alafia, and this is a brief overview of a clinical trial about Alzheimer's disease and dementia, specifically examining neurological disorders. The purpose of the study was to look at clinical trials that happen for Alzheimer's because they've had clinical breaks in the designs, which have created failure in these clinical trials. The trials examine illness-altering diseases for Alzheimer's disease. About 99% of composites never received acceptance in the first phase of the trial, and we think it's due to the fact that complications of Alzheimer's disease or therapy approaches are showing flaws in the framework. Moving on, it's still on the purpose of the study. It could also be how memory is measured when interaction happens with medications or trauma, nutrition, movement, education, so many other variables, including caregiving, stress, levels of education, dialect, and socialization. If we stop and question the flaws, more attention, more light is brought to the situation, and especially before factoring them into the trial. And it offers more validity for the study, more credibility, and definitely brings about more answers. So, if we break down Alzheimer's a bit, Alzheimer's is a neurological disease that features variants such as we said, nutrition and mental studies. They can definitely impact illness and development and other things like that. Neurological diseases such as Alzheimer's invade the nervous system and leave patients at a disadvantage. Most often, these disadvantages include patients losing their faculties and eventually their lives. This is a big deal because the brain starts to become disconnected from cognitive functioning, and it allows the loss of reasoning and just normal functioning in everyday life. If we really look at the statistics, one third of people, which is 85% and older, have this disorder. And people here in the United States specifically look at it as a commonplace illness. But what we have to start to realize is that it's not. It's not commonplace at all. If we start looking at determining some variables, so the biggest thing is there are variables that are called concealed or that exist in plain sight. This helps to bring to our attention any effective therapies that happen throughout the trial. So the variables will be broken up into two categories. The first is everyday variables. We'll call that X. They measure the dietary habits, and cerebral stimulation, and physical capabilities. The second is going to be clinic day, which is variable Y. That measures unrelated sicknesses, the conditions of the clinic, and any other associated diseases. Our goal is to make sure that we have information, how prescribed drugs and physical activity and educational status, even diet, looks at and affects the disease, whether it's the development or even the attitude of the clinicians towards the patient and the conditions overall. It also shows the role of observation, and this is critical because all the information, the data that most get when it comes to Alzheimer is based on observation. So we have to start asking ourselves, is the observation accurate? Is it done well? And is there any room for improvement there? Many clinical trials for Alzheimer's disease have developed failure, unrivaled failure. And the biggest thing there is the trial will start to show some troublesome variables that can hinder some of this, especially when we're looking at narcotics and illness correlation. Some of the potential variables even serve as agitators. So if they don't get dealt with, they're unidentified and abandoned, then there's going to be future issues. It's important that the trial and the design studies are clear, making sure that we see the interactions of independent variables with drugs, disease, nutrition, and so forth. So we're going to look a little bit into the method, design, and strategy. We'll start off with demographical information. As you can see, the participants were conducted in large groups. We're looking at done in clusters of 50 people. Participants were about 35 to 85 with increments of 10 for men and women. Black, white, Asian, Latino, other males and females. One participant in clusters A through E, both male and female, were college graduates with a master's or doctoral degree, living in affluent areas. We named Piedmont and Santa Barbara, Palo Alto even. And five of the participants lived in lower and middle class areas such as Walnut, Northwest Palmdale, Cerritos. Yet 4 of the remaining participants lived in lower income areas such as Watts, University Park, and even Chinatown. If you look at the economic demographics, we started off with ranging the highest at 209,000 to 253,000. We went as low as 75,000 with those who don't even drive cars. Okay. Subjects were found at senior centers and community colleges and so forth. There were flyers distributed. We looked at library workers and retired professors and grandparents and so forth. We had over 335 potentials. 250 were identified as great candidates. 100 had the strongest work ethic, and we went from there. Potential subjects were experienced an online interview with 20 questions. We looked at their background in relation to the study that they were a part of. We even looked at caregivers. This was an important part because caregivers are very instrumental in the observation process. So each participant had to get a caregiver that would help them through the study. Apparatuses, mainly iPhones and iPads, were used to be able to record using the video feature, and this was really important for the caregivers. We also used a few apps that would help record information and receive all of the videos. So there are 2 variables. One was the everyday variable. And what we did is we looked at a 15 and 90-day intervals to see if there was any changes in their diet or minds or emotions. And at the end of the 90-day, they ended up getting MRIs. We looked at diet, as I said before. We even made some diet changes for them. And at the end of the day, the video journal was the most helpful because it would show us from a 30-day period what they look like and what were the developments and so forth. So then our second one was clinic day experiments. It was all about what happens when you go to the clinic. So the goal is to see how many good days versus bad days that a patient had in a 30-day period and so forth. Each cluster was assigned a day to go to the doctor. They came with their caregivers. And that's the end of that. The biggest thing for this is just to know that we have to keep educating ourselves about Alzheimer's because there's much to still learn.